Southside Speedway Illustrated, brought to you by Ashland Ford Mercury, Minuteman Press, Buddy South Auto Parts, Tommy's Refrigeration, Wally's Precision Machine, Zimmer Heating and Air Conditioning, The Bear 104.7, and Rick Stanley Auto Body.
It's the 94 season finale here at Southside Speedway. One last time, these guys get a little bit of coaching from Gary Fox and the rest of the officials. And speaking of that, that's part of tonight's show. Second half from last week where we interview the officials and the drivers, and they give you two different points of view as opinions of things that's taking place here during the 94 season. We also got highlights from tonight's racing action, and we've also got some points of interest from this year's champions and other contenders. All that and a whole lot more when Ashland Ford's Southside Speedway Illustrated continues.
The final sprint for the Charger class would go 40 laps to settle the 94 championship. Brad Skelling put the number 07 on the pole for the first time ever and would narrowly lead lap 1 over Chris Mull. Caution came to the speedway early as several contenders got together coming off turn 4, resulting in Tony Minner's climb onto pit wall. Minner's family showed concern but became relieved as Tony returned to the event before the end of the race. On the return to green, Mull kept the pressure on Skelding while the battle for third heated up between points contender Laval Balduck and Tommy Tatum. Balduck would take the position 3 laps later. Cautions would continue to tighten the field. Lap 9 saw Larry Woolcott test the backstretch boilerplate as he got loose coming off turn 2. Once again under green, the lead pack stayed tight. The top 3 point contenders were amidst a 6-car nose-to-tail battle. Balduck proved he was not going to just coast to the championship. On lap 16, he would stick the nose of his import Auto Haas Chevy under Chris Mull in turn 1. Using lap cars as a pick, he would secure the second spot. 5 laps later, he would make the same move, going into turn 3 to take the lead from Skelding. After a couple more laps of green and a few more laps of caution, the story changed again. Balduck slipped going through turns 1 and 2, opening the door for Mull and Tatum to slip through. Mull opened his advantage each lap and would take the win. Tatum held second, Balduck third in the title, while Stinson fought a late race war with Brad Skelding to take the 4th spot. Michael Greathouse rounded out the top 5. Chris Mull, I hope you're smiling now. I tell you, earlier tonight you looked kind of gloomy, but you picked up the final win of the season.
Yeah, I tell you what, I mean, we had a great car all day. I mean, I thought we could easily set on the pole and, you know, lead every lap, but we got bumped off the pole and had to fall in line behind him in the race, and we just sat and bided our time, and it paid off.
The weather cooled down for the end of the season, but you got hot. You gonna come back next year, I hope.
We're thinking about it.
Chris Mull, the final winner for 1994. Laval, what can you say? A fabulous season for you out here. You showed you weren't going to coast to the championship by no means. Stuck that bumper in there a couple of times, made the move to the front, drifted back towards the end, but you're the 94 champion.
Yeah, I was not going to back off at first. I say I'm going to try to win this. And then the car started to get loose a little bit. I said I better save the tire and let Chris go by. And I saw it was a space between the 7 and 62. Then I say let's go, let 2 cars go by, and I'm going to keep that third.
91 Rookie of the Year, 94 champion. What's in store for 95?
95, I'm looking for a ride, maybe drive a late model if somebody's got a car for me to drive. And my sponsor will follow me. If not, I'm just going to run Charger again.
Congratulations, Laval Balduck, the 1994 Charger Class champion.
Thank you. Goodbye, Laval.
Now we'll look to your points, the final for 1994. The championship for Grand Stocks had already been determined, but the fight from second on back will be settled with the final 30 laps of 94. Billy Morris had yet another pole win and would run to hold fifth over Robbie Langford. Morris would put the Last Chance Chevy out front, and John Eversole secured second spot over champion Glenn Jarman. Eversole was looking for a win to celebrate his 5th wedding anniversary with Michelle. Jarman's hood jumped up to out of its clamps early, forcing the 94 champion to an early pit stop. Wayne Hicks brought out caution number 1 on lap 4 as he skidded into turn 1. Back to green for 2 laps, and again under yellow, Greg Ferguson and David Lucian tangled in turns 3 and 4, sending Lucian's ride onto the front stretch boilerplate and then down again into a trail of sparks. Morris again seemed untouchable as he motored ahead of the battle behind that featured Eversole and David Zimmer. The battle for second and third on the raceway was also the fight for second and third in the points. Worth Red and Jim Thacker were also having a great tussle for fourth, while further back, Jarman was picking off contenders each lap as he marched back towards the front. When the final checkered fell, it was Morris was win number 10, Eversole second to retain second in the points, Zimmer third to finish off the year third in the standings, Worth Red fourth, and Jim Thacker rounding out the top 5. Billy got your hands full tonight. Checkered flags, trophies, and little Billy, of course, win number 10. A great season, 1994.
Yeah, I never would have dreamed it would have been as good as we run as good as we have. I should have, stayed in the points and tried to make an honest effort at it. We figured we were out of it, which we were, But we're just tickled to death, and the luck we've had, and we run good. The car run good tonight, and everybody was running good. Johnny, he run right on my bumper. I got in the traffic and slipped away a little bit. But hopefully, we'll get a sponsor, and maybe we can do something big for next year.
Billy Morris, 10 wins in 94, finishes it off with a win. I'm going to tell you, trouble early in the race. You came whipping right back up through the field. Regardless, you knew you were 94 champion coming in.
Yeah, that made it. I was thinking about that when that hood was off. I was going, oh, dear, what if it would have happened to me last week? This would have been terrible. But tonight with the hood flying off, no upset feelings whatsoever. And it was fun coming up through the pack. I couldn't go any further, though. Keith Cole was running a good line, and I did the best I could do. I don't know where I finished. I guess about 8th or so. I don't know, but it was fun.
Glenn Jarman, he's hard to follow off the speedway as well as on the speedway. The final look of the points for 1994 in the Grand Stocks. Final race for 94 would feature late model champion Shane Lockhart on the pole for the K95 150. Franklin Butler's Blue Flame 45 is on the outside front row as Eddie Johnson started third and Wayne Patterson fourth. Lockhart and Butler would run door-to-door on lap 1, but the K95 Pontiac got the bike coming off turn 4 to lead lap 2. Scott Willingham moved up from Grand Stock to late model for the final event, would go a lap down on circuit number 17. Lockhart pulled out to a 25-car length advantage over the nose-to-tail battle for second by lap 50. Butler was fending off Patterson for that second spot, while Patterson tried to hold off Johnson and Bugs Harefield. Ryan Farmer and David Morrison brought out the first caution on lap 54 to regroup the contenders. After a short yellow, it was back to green, and again Lockhart pulling away. Lap 75 brought the fans to their feet as Harefield nudged Patterson out of third going into turns 3 and 4. Harefield would then go to work on Butler for second. After 25 laps of door-slamming, fender-banging action, caution fell, allowing Butler to retain the spot, and just as Johnson got underneath Patterson for fourth. 47 laps to the end of the finale and back to green, but only for 3 laps as Willingham, Larry Bryant, and Darrell Cooper got together in turns 3 and 4. When the green returned, Harefield's ride would falter, sending him to pit road, ending his run. With 20 laps remaining, Lockhart set a full straightaway ahead of the door-to-door run for second between Butler and Johnson. The championship and final win went to Lockhart as Butler fended off Johnson by inches at the line for second. Patterson takes fourth. Kenny Evans would smoke the right front to for the final 25 seconds to get fifth. He'd already clinched the championship coming into tonight's event, and provided you get through the gray areas, you won the race tonight as well.
Yeah, I tell you, we don't know what to think about this. It's kind of, the championship hadn't sunk in yet, and I guess it will at the banquet somewhere along there. But it's just come back out here week after week and run good. We have been running a little conservative last couple of weeks trying to get the championship because it got late in the year and we started having to look at the big picture. But this week we didn't have anything to lose and everything to gain. So we come out here and run hard just like we did at the beginning of the year.
So what you've been saying, you've just been toying with the rest of the field for the last 5 or 6 weeks. No strong runs. You're just going to play with them.
No, we weren't toying. The car was set up a little conservative, and I wouldn't take chances like I should and things like that. But you got to finish races first before you can win races and win championships and things like that. But I think the championship meant more than just another win because we've had our wins and hopefully we'll get some more.
Driving the K95 to another championship, Shane Lockhart. Now a look at your final point standings for the late model series in 1994.
Last week's show, we brought you some interesting points from officials and drivers. This week, we're going to continue on with that. Track safety is an issue here. We'll talk about that along with the gray areas. This is a gray area, and there's a whole lot of gray areas in the rule books out here at Southside. A lot of discussion going on from the drivers about that, and we talked to Gary Fox about that. Yvonne has a whole lot of information coming at you right now as he goes up to the luxury boxes along with Gary Fox, and they talk about the issues at Southside.
Because this is a Friday night track, and there's very few Friday night tracks in the Mid-Atlantic region, some drivers seem to feel that the officials are showing too much empathy at the breakdown time after post-race, during a post-race inspection. They feel that they don't want to put the drivers through the wee hours of the Saturday morning rebuilding a car after inspection. Some drivers seem to believe that there's too much leniency being shown by the officials at breakdown time. Take a look.
It hasn't been a whole lot checked out here this year. They could pull some heads off, check some intakes, do a whole lot of things after the races. It's a lot of money tied up down here in these pits, and a lot of these guys are really trying hard. Everybody out here tries hard, don't get me wrong, but I feel like some of them are allowed to stretch the rules because things aren't checked.
No, not at Southside. I think they're concerned about the guys having to run on Saturday night or somewhere Saturday, and so they're not too hard on them as far as that's concerned. The only time it happens is when somebody protests. I know what we do, and we never cheat. And I
Honest.
We never do. It's no fun. It would be absolutely no fun if we cheated.
They should be able to have enough time to go up and down this line, check carburetors, check whatever, just like they check the clutches after the race. We ain't but 3 weeks from the end of the year. That's the first time my clutch has been looked at. I mean, what I'm saying is, and I know they don't have enough people to do what I'm talking about, but there should be enough people. They make enough money at this track to have a couple extra officials to check everything on these cars.
What factors are involved in post-race breakdown? There seems to be inconsistent format of teardown. Some cars get inspected, yet on other nights, some cars don't. What gives?
We decide sometime during the evening, based on what happens during that race, what we want to look at. Sometimes we have a preconceived idea, we want to go looking for something maybe in the carburetor, and then a guy runs away from the race and just leaves the field. We change in midstream and say, uh-oh, something could be wrong here. He left the rest of the field. Maybe we need to go into the heads or further in the engine. It depends on the competition also throughout the race. We've got a race where there's 4 or 5 guys that are sticking together. You tend to do a lighter inspection where if one guy dominates the field and wears the field out, or 1 or 2 cars wears the field out, okay? At the end of the night, we ask for the top 4 cars to come to the scales. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to inspect the top 4. In Winston Cup, what they do is they inspect the top 3 after a Cup race, and that's it. The rest of them go home. Yes, you talk about some of these guys that have to race on Saturday night. Yeah, you feel bad some nights when you got to tear them down and you know they got to work extra hard to put them back together. But sometimes you just can't help it. You got to tear them down. I can't say that we don't do that just because we know they've got 1 car and they got to race it the next night. It depends on what happens throughout the race. Typically, we try to look at the top 4. Sometimes it might be nothing but weigh them, send them on their way, or it may be something more detailed. We don't hit the same thing every week because these guys will start figuring out sooner or later and say, well, then they're going to look at this again this week, so I'll be right here and I can do something somewhere else.
Gary, the proverbial gray areas seem to run rampant from engine building to chassis setup right down to maybe rules and etiquette on the track. Is there enough communication between officials and teams to shed light not only on rules interpretation, but on enforcement? Some drivers seem to think that there's a lot to be desired there.
It's not the same all the time. One time you'll get away with it, one time you won't. And I think it should be the same all the time. You need to define it and make sure which way, like the definition of stock. There's a whole lot of things considered stock for this car or stock for another car.
I think that there's a lot of gray areas here that engine builders and car builders don't know about until they show up at the racetrack. I think this needs to be put into the rule books explicitly, whether it's a track rule or whether it's NASCAR rules. You know, it's hard to come out here and go by the rules and read between the lines and then come out here and find out you're wrong in the middle of the season. You need to know that at the first part of the season, and you do that by having the rules written down in black and white.
How much reading between the lines is there between the teams and the officials? And can we reach a fine line at the track so that we can all understand what right is right and what wrong is wrong?
It's one of the things that has gone on in racing forever. It's been a proverbial game between the officials, not only at Southside Speedway, but every racetrack. The drivers are stretching the rules to the limit. The drivers try to read between the lines. If they say something that says stock, well, they'll take a stock Ford part and try to put it on a Chevrolet. That is in violation of the spirit or the intent of the rules. But if you go and start writing rules and start giving an example for every little thing, you know, I think that our rule book, you couldn't carry it around. You'd never get through reading it before the next season started. I do have a complaint, and I have over the years, the rule book with the late model stock cars. I have said for years that it has been too vague. And we've talked about some tolerances and different things in like your wheelbase, tread widths, and these type of things. And some of those things have begun to pop up in the rule book. Every year, later on in October, Jerry Cook, the competition director, calls the chief stewards together from the different tracks. They sit down and they said, okay, what worked, what did not work, what do we need to change? We come back and we wait for the rule book to come out. We get it in January, February, just like everybody else. Sometimes we're happy with it as officials. Sometimes we're not as happy. We were hoping something else would have closed another loophole that somebody has found. You tend to try to work with the drivers sometimes, especially in the first race or so, and say, no, that's not exactly what we mean. As long as it hasn't given them a big competitive edge, you can let it slide for a race and you get it right. If it's given them a big competitive advantage, then you got to take something away from them. We try to enforce them. These guys are trying to read through the you know, the lines, so to speak. And then on the other side, you got your engine builders around. Hey, I want to know exactly what I can do to my engines because I don't want one of my engines I sell these guys to be found illegal, and that's going to hurt my business in the long run. And I understand that too. And that is just something. We used to have meetings with the drivers before the season started. We didn't get real good attendance, to be honest with you, especially in our late models. But then again, they're governed a little different because they are a touring division. They go to other racetracks. Typically, the late models, a lot of them have been to Martinsville before our season opens, and they get a lot of them straight before they even get here. Makes it a little easier on us sometimes. I don't know that you'll ever have ironclad rules where people won't be looking for a way to escape.
Well, the one thing we didn't want to talk about are rumor mills. We don't like to get involved with that. Maybe we don't. Gary, what are your plans for next year? Are we going to see you back here? Are we going to see the chemistry we talked about in these last 20 minutes gel a little bit together so that next year some of these issues don't arise because they're handled? What's in store for you?
Well, right now, I really don't have an answer as to what's going to happen next year. Joe has pretty much given me the green light to start things for next year. As far as putting rules together, putting the group of officials together. Until we get past the season and I have some time to rest and think about it, talk to my wife, I really can't say for sure which way I'll lean. Right now, I'll waffle back and forth. I say, yeah, you know, do it because it's in my blood and I've been out here for 19 years. At other times, especially this time of the year, drivers are tired, crews are tired, officials are tired. Everybody needs a break, and that's part of the pressure. Some of the criticisms that we've seen in some of the tapes here, they are normal, everyday criticisms that I think you get all the time at most racetracks. Maybe a little more so at Southside because of the time element, the frustration that people have. They get here late. Everybody's rushing to try to get the job done. Everybody works to a certain hour and gets to the track when they can. That's drivers and officials, and it makes it a little tougher. After some time off, things may look different. It's not that I don't enjoy working with these guys. I work with most of these guys almost the entire 19 years I was here. I consider all of my friends, and yeah, we have disagreements, but it stops right here. And I know that we're going to work together the next race and the next season a lot of times. So I'm not concerned about some of the things. I am glad that some of these guys felt that they could speak up, whether they spoke up to you or spoke up to me. Some of them don't come to me with some of these concerns. I wish they would. I don't mind talking to anybody as long as they're rational and want to sit down and talk about it. I've had some drivers that come to me this year and have mentioned some things, and we have made some changes to help the drivers in those areas. I have a couple more changes that I'm thinking about next year that will make things a lot better. One of our biggest problems is restarts. I have a change I want to make in the restarts that I think will eliminate those pileups in the corners, which causes most of our problems here, especially in our lower divisions. And I think if we do some of these things next year, we'll see some positive improvement, and that's what we're working towards.
The 94 finale, it was a hot one, no doubt, here at Southside Speedway. You got to see some great action in the highlights, of course, interviews with the drivers, and Chief Track Steward Gary Fox as they related to all the incidents of 1994. Anyway, we'll be back next week as we bring you the highlights from the 1994 season, the season in review. Yvonne and I sit down and talk it out with you, and also Power Play. Look for that. That'll be upcoming this fall and winter as Yvonne takes you to the Admiral's Renegade Show. Don't miss it, fans. We'll see you next week. From Ashland Ford Mercury and Southside Speedway Illustrated, good night.
Southside Speedway Illustrated, brought to you by Ashland Ford Mercury, Minuteman Press, Buddy South Auto Parts, Tommy's Refrigeration, Wally's Precision Machine, Simmer Heating and Air Conditioning, The Bear 104.7, and Rick Stanley Auto Body.